So hello, everyone. If you have just joined, please take a little moment to put on slido.com #WinR, whether you tend to be a separator, an integrator, or a cycler. We're going to come back and share the results of this little quiz with you a little bit later. So we'll just leave that up on the screen just a little bit longer while I begin the session, and then we will take that off the screen and you will be able to see all of our faces. So first of all, welcome to this topic. We're going to talk today about the big challenge of balancing work and home, work and personal lives. And that's a big topic. We had more than 600 women register today, which is one of our biggest numbers of registration, which I think is testament to the challenge that this topic brings for all of us. We have 5 amazing laureates who are going to share their insights and experiences and tips. But I would first of all like to acknowledge that we today are here on the land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and we pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. And do feel free on the chat to share which land you are on today. Also, feel free to put questions into the chat as we proceed. And we will have, if you've been on the series before, you will know that we have Annika come a little bit later on to share some of those questions. You're also welcome to put any other thoughts or reactions you have into the chat for the community. So I'm going to kick off now. So we are ready to roll. So what we're going to begin with is I'm going to introduce our 5 laureates, and I'm going to ask them to share a 6-word memoir about their sort of take on this topic. And what is this 6-word memoir? I think if you don't use it, or if you haven't used it, it's a nice little thing to use in a classroom or in other sorts of events. And you just get some people to summarize something about them in just 6 words. And if you go onto Google and you type 6-word memoir, you'll see all sorts of famous people have got their 6-word memoirs. So mine, in the context of this topic, is anything to stay out the kitchen. So basically, I am a very non-domesticated person, and you know, part of that sort of a natural inclination, perhaps part of it's a bit of a strategy also, but I have that has been a personal choice that I've made, not to be so focused on, you know, having a perfect house or preparing wonderful meals, etc. I'm not advocating that to anyone else. It's just personally how one of the ways in which I've been able to manage my personal life with my work demands. But let's go to Jackie. And we have Professor Jacqueline Batley from the University of Western Australia, so a fellow Perth person, which is great, who is a biologist and does amazing research on crop genetics and disease resistance. And I've probably really not given justice to your research there, Jackie. But can you share your 6-word memoir and why it resonated with you?
Yeah, so mine is I always aim for marathon achievements. And the reason I picked this is that obviously with the work demands and with 4 children, I needed to really have a balance for me time. And I found running was an absolutely fantastic way to be able to have that time. And I found it really relaxed me and I could focus more on work. And I ended up just expanding it and somehow running marathons.
Fantastic. I love that. I wish I'd had that 6-word memoir, as in executed it in my life, but unfortunately I have not. But we'll talk a little bit more perhaps later about personal fitness and how we try to deal with that amongst all the other demands. Gabrielle, very pleased to introduce Professor Gabrielle Belz, who's from the University of Queensland, and does amazing research on immune responses. I think comes with a veterinary and surgical background, which is an intriguing combination. But what is your 6-word memoir, Gabrielle, and where does it come from?
Thanks, Sharon. So I've said passion and challenges drive balance resetting. and this is somewhat along the lines of Jackie's mantra. I think it's really important to have a hobby, and my hobby is cycling and track cycling, which I do at a national level. What I find is that if you have a hobby, whether it's fitness or other things, it really forces you to plan very scrupulously so you can get to that thing that you love doing. And that really gives you structure to planning your day, week, months, and years, especially if you're doing things at national levels or going to international meets to do, say, cycling or running. So leave it there.
Thank you so much, Gabrielle. Marcella, I'm very delighted to introduce Professor Marcella Bilek from the University of Sydney, who does research on applied physics, material science, plasma processing, and other wonderful things. What is your 6-word memoir? Oh, you're on mute, Marcella.
Yep. Okay. No, I just had the doorbell ringing, so I put it on mute to spare you. Yeah, so my 6-word memoir is Seize Multitasking Opportunities to Mitigate Chaos. And that's really come about, I think, because I say yes to a lot of things. And this is because I'm interested in too many things, I think. And, you know, when opportunities come along, I think, oh, this is great, I should do that. And I end up putting so much on my plate that chaos is the inevitable outcome. So I've become actually very good at multitasking, trying to get a bunch of things done at once, so that I can progress everything and do all those things. And usually it comes off, to my surprise.
Thank you, Marcella. Next up, we have Professor Maria Forsyth from Deakin University, who does engineering, electrolytes, and so on. And it's very interesting. We have a very science-oriented group of laureates today. So, Maria, can you share your 6-word memoir?
Sure, it's breathe, stay strong, and maintain sanity. And that fits very much with what Jacqueline and the others have said, really, Gabrielle, that I found that in order to stay sane, not burn out, I had to start to have some non-negotiables. And for me, my non-negotiables became meditation, brief meditations and journaling in the mornings, exercise, running. When I was younger, it was running. Then as I got older and my body didn't like so much running, I had to go back to doing gym work and staying strong. And that was also meant to maintain my sanity, so I was able to function and do my job and enjoy what I was doing rather than burning out.
Fantastic. So read, stay strong and maintain sanity. Love it. And last but definitely not least, I'm delighted to introduce Professor Dina Lyris. And sorry, I should have checked how to pronounce your names beforehand and I didn't. But from Monash University, who does work on biomedicine, antibiotic resistance and so on. So would you like to share your 6-word memoir, Dina?
Thanks, Sharon. So my 6-word memoir is Get Unimportant Things Done Really Fast. Because I think there are 2 reasons for this. One of them is that I came to leadership very late in my career. I was very junior for a long time in my career. So when opportunities presented themselves, I didn't want to say no to anything. And because of that, I had to figure out how to get things done. And so, you know, as well as the laureate and running my research group, I was president of the Australian Society for Microbiology. I'm deputy director of a 900-person institute. I don't want to say no to those things. And if you try to be perfect and try to do everything really fantastically well, you can't do it. So there are some things that are not worth spending time on. And I think if you can learn that early in your career, you will benefit from that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. We have an amazing group of women with us today. And sometimes I do get asked the question, you know, is it still relevant what laureates have to say that, you know, got all these resources and they're older and all this sort of thing. And I think one of the great, and look, I'm absolutely not saying laureates are the only people who should talk about these topics, of course not. But I think one of the things is that often laureates have had lots of different experiences and are able to reflect on those, sort of looking back as well as looking forward. And so in that spirit, I'd really like now to talk a little bit about times in your life where things haven't gone so well, where maybe you have not successfully managed to juggle. I'm never quite sure what the right word is. Some people say juggling's way too smooth for really this balance doesn't seem right either. You know, we need to invent a new word to describe this sort of tension between work and personal lives. So I'm just going to ask each of you to reflect on, you know, times when things haven't gone perhaps so well in this domain and what you did about it. And maybe I'll kick the conversation off with Maria. We had a quick chat at the beginning where she shared that burnout is something that has happened to her. So Maria, let's go to you.
Okay. Yeah, look, I think like probably all the women on this call, we it's hard to say no to things. And so when you're younger in particular, you say yes to everything because you don't want to miss out on opportunities. And I was one of those people, said yes to everything. And I had 2 children at home and single parenting. And I just found after a while that I was working 80-hour weeks, not having the time to do my exercise and to do these things that are now my non-negotiables. And so I burnt out. I got to the point where I couldn't function at all. I would literally drive into the university and couldn't go to my office. I could not face anything. I could work on my own, but I could not face people. And I thought it's time to really do something about that. And so I did 2 things. First, initially I went to a retreat and I reset myself, realized that I had to rethink the way I was doing some things, realized I had to learn to not feel guilty about not doing everything perfectly, to Dina's point, that you have to do some things fast and say that, you know, good enough is enough in some things. And I had to learn to delegate. So I really had this reset in my life, probably around 15, 16 years ago now. But then I found myself getting back to those points again every few years, or maybe every 5 or 6 years. Again, I'd solve the problem or solve the situation for a few years, and then I would end up back into a pre-burnout. But I could now recognize what was happening. So I was able to put in those things like breathing and meditating and exercising into place. And also probably about 10 years ago, I went and sought out a coach, different to a retreat, a coach, and she helped me, again, be able to learn what was important, learn what my value system was, and then to say yes to things within my value system. And that value system, those values might change year by year. Any of you have heard of Brené Brown? She has 100+ values online, a list of values for effective leadership. And I would look through those values, which I have up on the screen right now, and say, which one of those do I want to do is important to me for this year when I say yes to things? So, for example, one year it was joy and making a difference. Another year it was family for various reasons and parents. And when I was saying yes to things, it was like, does this fit into my values that I want to work with this year or right now? And I think I've tried to stick to that as much as I can in the last sort of decade or so, and I've been much saner, keeping my sanity, and much more able to be more effective as well, actually, I think, than I was maybe 15 years ago.
Thanks, Maria. And this is a conversation we often have in women in research, which is because this question of how do you decide what to say yes and no to? You know, often we are finding ourselves saying it's about being thoughtful and strategic about it. And you just articulated that beautifully, that was a really important way to help decide what you should do and what you shouldn't do, is to be clear about your values. And also, I love also that you said you've got to revisit this as well. It's not like we suddenly get a bit of therapy and we're perfect. You know, it's a lifelong quest, really. So thank you so much for sharing that. I might go to you next, Marcella. Has things been smooth sailing for you all of your career, or have there been some up and down times? How has your experience been?
Yeah, I don't think smooth sailing happens for anyone, for the whole career at least. And I have had, I guess, 2 very down periods. One was to do with just dynamics in the school and a very misogynistic head of school. And through that, I realized just how important maintaining our confidence is to actually being able to do anything well. You know, I saw it affecting my grant applications. I saw it affecting, you know, how I was able to present things in meetings or convince people. So every aspect of my work actually became lower quality. And that's, I guess, at that point, it also coincided with a time when my son was he just gotten into the top maths class in year 7, and I discovered that there were only 4 girls in a class of 25. So I sort of started thinking what's going on, and I looked into stereotype threat. So I started working actually in schools, you know, giving lectures on it, because I think it's not appreciated just how much, you know, these attacks on your confidence can affect your output. Because and what really twigged there was that the school said to me, well, yeah, there's 4 girls. And I said, well, isn't that a problem? And they said, well, we just looked at the marks. And so I thought, okay, something's affecting their performance, because it's not possible that only 4 out of 25 girls, you know, are talented enough to be in that top class. And that, I guess, was great, because it also helped me see what was happening to me, because at the same time I was having these really big struggles at work where I really was starting to think that I've lost it. You know, I should go and retire or do something else. But that wasn't the case. You know, once I was able to pull up the confidence, and in fact, the very fact that I applied for the laureate was due to someone in the research office coming up to me after another meeting and saying, you really should go for a laureate. And I said, oh, look, I don't think I'm up to that. And they said, no, you are. And I said, oh, I can't handle riding a rope with all that stuff about how good I am. And she said, they've just simplified it. You know, and I got a lot of encouragement from some key people in the research office, and that was key to really lifting my confidence. And unfortunately, they told me 2.5 weeks before the deadline, but I still managed to, you know, just with that confidence, it really fired me up. And I managed to write a successful application in that 2.5 weeks. I literally submitted it, you know, 5 minutes before the deadline, 5 p.m. Thursday, I remember it was. So that is really important. And I think for those younger people, just be aware that, you know, don't judge yourself. If you're feeling down, your work is not reflective of what you can actually accomplish. So you need to have that encouragement. And I guess my second difficult period was the start of COVID, which unfortunately coincided with the start of my laureate and a huge expansion of my group. It also coincided with our university bringing online a whole lot of admin systems that are basically web page based. You don't know who to talk to or who's responsible for making things work, which I had a lot of trouble navigating, plus sort of, you know, getting everything working online. And because of that, I've never had admin assistants in my group, and it's a big group. You know, I have 15 students, about 6 staff. And lots of different grants as well as the laureate. And it's been very, very taxing to manage. And what I've discovered is that, you know, I've tried to talk to the upper echelons of management, and what I've discovered is they can't relate to it, because they all have EAs and have always had EAs who are very competent, you know. And I've had some of them say, oh, just hire yourself an EA. And I'm thinking, I don't know how to do that. You know, I don't know how to evaluate people's skills for that. I don't know how to support them when they come on board. So it's really not an option. And I'm still dealing with that, but I guess I've managed to convince a few people to help out here and there. But that's a struggle. And with during the COVID time, I also discovered exercise. So a few people have said that. And I think before that, I didn't need it, because I was running around the university so much that I was actually getting, you know, well over the 10,000 steps a day without realizing it, and at speed, because I was always late for everything. But during COVID, I had, you know, neck issues and various things. And I discovered, just like somebody else had said earlier, running is a way to release and
Thanks,
and get that exercise in.
I guess, and what you're alluding to is that the university systems, the roles that other people play in our lives are huge factors. And we'll come back a little bit later to sort of thinking about how we can help other people with this challenge of work, personal juggling, whatever the word is. But let's go to you, Jackie, next. How have things, has been a time for you where it's been particularly hard, and what did you do to move forward?
So I think one of the examples is when I first moved out to Australia, I loved the position, but I was working for state government, and my manager at the time gave loads of opportunities, which I loved, and of course didn't say no to any of them because it was fantastic in my career. But he was an absolute workaholic. He'd work about 20 hours a day. And so he always expected the same from us, which was fine until I had my son. And the tipping point came, I was working through a lot of maternity leave, which wasn't great. And I was actually back in the UK visiting my mum so she could meet her first grandchild for the first time. And he insisted that I fly back to Melbourne for a meeting. So I flew in, landed, had a shower, went to the meeting, flew straight back to the UK. And I got back and I realised it was completely ridiculous. And if he wasn't going to take no, because I said no and he insisted, and I realised the meeting was a waste of time when I was there, And so I realized at first I tried to say no to things and he wouldn't listen. So I took the extreme move of leaving a permanent position, a gamble for a 1-year position at the University of Queensland in the hope I could get a fellowship. And it worked, but it was a gamble. But I knew that I could not cope anymore with that work-life balance. And since then, I've realized, and I'm not good at it, but I've realized that I do have to say no to things. And a bit like Maria said, it starts building up and you realize you're taking on too much and you don't need it all. So then I have to reset and say no, and then it gradually builds up again.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that this happens to many of us, that, you know, we take stock, we start saying no, and then the creep happens, the scope creep, which, you know, often we allow and even encourage, and then we have to take stock and start again. And, you know, so it's not a one-off process. So thanks for sharing, Jacqueline. And again, we see the role of other people in this, and how it's not all just perfectly within our control. Let's go to you, Dina. What's been your experience?
I think I can talk about two things, and I won't spend long on either of them. But I think one struggle is, you know, I have 2 children, and, you know, my daughter, they're older now, they're 25, and my daughter turns 21 next week, so they're older. But, you know, about 3 years ago, my daughter's suffered from very high anxiety and panic attacks, and wasn't doing well at high school and really struggled with it. And that was really hard, trying to balance, you know, work and my big group and all my students and postdocs at work, and putting in grant applications and all the rest of it. And actually that coincided with submitting my laureate. And trying to effectively help my child. That was really hard. That was a struggle. Do I have answers? Not really. I was just there every day for it, right? And we got through, and she's doing well now, and she's better. And I think being out of high school is the best thing ever, because high schools are awful places, frankly. So that's one thing. But then the second thing is, you know, dealing with failure. Because, you know, Sharon, you said at the beginning, here are these amazing laureates. We're not always successful. We fail a lot. I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of everybody when I say we fail a lot. And my laureate application, the first time I applied, I was in the bottom 25%. And then I got my act together and got it the next year. But, you know, we fail a lot. I was lucky to get 2 ideas grants last year, but that was the 3rd time I'd applied for them, right? I failed before that. So failure comes with this, and it's a struggle. And even when you are these successful laureates, I'm pretty sure I can say we still think, God, I'll never get a grant again, because that pressure is really high. And you think, oh, I'm not as good as they think I am, and I'm going to keep failing. So I think it's important to talk about the failures as well as the successes, and for everyone to realise that even for the people who look successful, God, there's a lot of failure in the background. And I don't know, it's a whole separate conversation. How do you deal with that? But the anxiety of that sits with all of us in different ways. So just recognising that, I think, is really important.
Thank you, Dina. And Gabrielle?
So I guess building a little bit on a few things that have been touched on, we do say yes to lots of things, and that is because we don't know where the next invitation is coming from. And the data says this about women. You can be a male and invited to a conference without a paper, and you can be a female with a high-profile paper and not get an invite. So you say yes to everything, and you find yourself going along saying yes, working out strategies to not balance it, but to optimize how you sneak all those tasks in. And you can be in environments where you're not being given those leadership opportunities despite your performance. And some of the people around you will sort of, adopt an approach of, oh, well, do you really want that challenge? Or do you really want to do that? That's relatively non-supportive. And you sort of get trapped in that without realizing that it contributes to burnout, ill health, just a negative approach to your research. And so it's important, I think, to have those external sponsors or just people that you can bounce ideas off, who say to you, no, you don't need to be on 15 panels. you know, you need one national and one international, and you've got all your brownie points doing that. And like encouraging you to have a reset and think about how you get those opportunities, because you can start to believe the culture and the rhetoric that's been fed to you around your environment without stepping out and having the confidence to explore other opportunities. And for me, someone literally just said to me, "Why are you doing this?" And I hadn't really checked myself and said, well, why am I doing this? You know, we're so worried about where the next grant is that we don't go, well, what do we actually need, as opposed to what are we actually doing? And so that was a trigger point for me to look at other opportunities and what leadership opportunities do I want? How do I want to grow? How do I want to contribute? And that sort of resulted in a change of my setting, and doing a lot of things that I'm really excited about and passionate about, and really take pretty good use of the skill sets that I can bring to the equation. So it is having that, you know, regular check-in with yourself about trying to think, what decisions do I need to make for the next year, 5 years, month, week, so you can really priority set and not miss out on things and not lead to burnout.
Thanks, Gabrielle. And I think, you know, there's definitely a theme coming across here around, on the one hand, embracing opportunities, saying yes, multitasking, but on the other hand, doing that in a thoughtful way, in accordance with your needs, your values, but also this recognition that we have to do that continually. It's not a one-off sort of process. I think another theme that's coming through, I think, is, you know, maybe it's a theme around self-compassion almost, that we all fail, and even maybe we shouldn't be calling it failure, actually. You know, we're all trying and not getting necessarily success, but we keep going, and the importance of doing that. And by the way, we have a Women in Research session completely devoted to dealing with setbacks and failure. So there's a webinar on that for anyone who hasn't seen it. Another theme I think that's coming out here is, and I think this is really important, and it's something actually that Debbie Terry, who's the Vice Chancellor of University of Queensland, once said to me, and it had an impact on me. She's a little bit older than me, and I was probably having the young kids phase where, you know, everything's crazy. And she did sort of say, look, time with your kids is short and it changes, you know. And I think that is really important, that the demands on us change over time, where we're at change. So sometimes I think we need to think about our careers. You know, they are a big campaign. It's not just a one-off thing. And there will be times where we have to work extraordinarily hard and drop everything. And there will be times when we have a daughter that's having challenges, or an elderly parent or a friend, and we also have to drop everything at work. And I think that we will have these roller coaster rides with our lives. And that's important to remember, that we can all be at different points on that roller coaster. So thank you, guys. I want to turn now to this question of how do we help other individuals. All of you manage postdocs, PhDs, and have done throughout your career. What is it that we can do, or what would you like to see happening to better support our early career researchers? Because, you know, many of them are juggling teaching, small children, all sorts of things. So what should we be doing? And is there an example even of something you've done or something you've seen a department done? So maybe, Jackie, would you like to kick us off on that concept?
So I always, having understood trying to juggle family and work, I'm always very supportive of people needing, you know, that time to go, sick children, or they want to go to the assembly to see them get an award, or, you know, things like that. I'm always make it very clear as soon as people come in that family comes first. Although you think work does, actually what you just said, your time with children is short, you've got to put them first. But what I try and do is tell people that, there's a few things I do. I try and give opportunities. If I'm offered something, I'll say, actually, I'd rather that this ECR gets the opportunity instead. So if I get invited to a conference, can they go and talk instead of me? Because it's more important for them to be seen than me. But on a more practical level, I try and help and say, don't make everything perfect, because you're not going to make everything perfect. My kids probably didn't get bathed anywhere near as much as they should have done, but it doesn't matter. As long as they were happy and healthy, that's what mattered to me. And so, the same with work. I mean, it goes back to what Dina said. There's some things that you just shouldn't spend too much time on. You just got to get them out of the way and do it. And so I really try and help people get that balance of what's important and what isn't important. And it comes into both work and family. But yeah, and the main thing of ask for help if you need it. Because I've had times where I've had to basically just scream and shout and say, I don't feel appreciated. The university might be putting up videos and things of me everywhere, but I personally feel like they don't care about me at all. And when I said that, they didn't realize I was feeling it. So I think sometimes you've actually just got to be brave enough to speak up and say, I'm not, I'm feeling this, because people don't always know. So ask help.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Jackie. And I think that is so important, because also many people in the university system are overloaded. And so, you can't necessarily expect your boss to notice, or, your colleagues to notice that you're exhausted and about to fall off the edge, because they themselves are sometimes struggling too. So asking for help, letting people know, is so important. So thank you for sharing. Let's go to you, Maria. How do you sort of help or support other people, or what have you seen that's good practice from others?
Yeah, so I guess I agree with everything that was said by Jacqueline in terms of giving people opportunities, definitely. But also I think, having learned from my own, meltdowns and the need to look after myself, I really have encouraged and supported, particularly young, like during COVID, I ran a morning tea web morning tea type thing. We would get together for half an hour, have a chat. I was listening to a lot of podcasts around leadership, women in leadership. So I'd share that with them. We'd have a discussion. That's just to try and get ideas about how other people approach leadership. But also encouraging them even now to say, what does success look like for you? I mean, they look at me, and I didn't plan to have a big group. I didn't plan to be a lawyer. I didn't plan to do any of those things, right? I didn't have these grandiose ideas of what I would be. I just did my research. I loved what I did. I was passionate about it, and you get success as a result. So what I say to them is, you don't have to have 20 people in your team. If you have, what success look like for you? Maybe it's just one postdoc and a couple of students, and you're teaching, and you don't have to model yourself on me or somebody else. Is what's right for you? So I try and have those conversations with them to say, what does success look like for you? And again, be true to your values. What does it look like for you? And if you've got a family, yes, family comes first. I resonate with Dina. I had my 16, from 16 to 20 odd, meltdowns, and I had to deal with that, and the team at work with more meltdowns. I mean, nowadays they're also having meltdowns. So how do you help those young folk, not, be able to have good mental health? So I prioritise mental health a lot in the team, including having brought people in to do meditation with the team, and having, really exposing them to that sort of mental health is important. Exposing them to what does success look like for you, and being there as an ear if I need to be to listen.
Thanks, Maria. And again, that's sort of about it being okay for people to disclose where they're at and creating that culture. Gabrielle, any thoughts from you about what you've personally done or seen other people or other departments do that helps others?
Yeah, I mean, I think us modelling the behaviour that is good for development. I was really lucky. My PhD supervisor had a lot of mental health issues, and so he really modelled that behaviour. And so I have conversations with people, whether they do or don't have. I mean, I just think this is a life thing that we have to build into our days. How are we managing our own health, our mental health, with the pressures that we have? And so I have those discussions proactively when we do our APDs each year, but also proactively 3 or 4 times a year. What does it look like for that person? Their needs are really different from someone else, and also where they source their help and support will possibly be very different from somebody else
Mm.
for a whole variety of reasons. And yeah, for me, family is first. And I think with science, we do get the opportunity to have a lot of flexibility, but we're obviously scored on what we generate. So we have to work out that framework. And someone mentioned about elderly family. So I think we have lives bookended by children and aged care, which I've encountered recently. And that really disrupts everything that you've been thinking you've accomplished in being able to manage things, because it becomes really unpredictable. And so it means that you will then have to reshape some of the things you do in order to deal with that, where you don't know from day to day what it's really going to look like. And extended family members who are responding to it in different ways. So I think having these conversations open, not to tell people how to do things, but to resource the pathways they need to go and have the conversations they need, to find the solutions that fit with their life and their families. And if we don't do that early, then it sort of will spin out of control.
Thank you, Gabrielle. And I'm really hearing this strong theme of everybody's different. And so it's really important to have those individual conversations. I'm going to ask Marcella and Dina to respond fairly quickly, because I'd like to go to the opportunity for Annika to share some questions. So Marcella, just a quick sentence on something that you do or you've seen done to help other people?
Yeah, so I just try and be very open and approachable, and I encourage all of my staff and students to contact me, before things spiral out of control, and I try and make adjustments for them wherever I can. And I give them because my emails are overloaded, I give them my mobile number and I say, look, just text. If you sent me an email and it needs urgent attention or you want to talk, just text. Right. And I try and be really responsive.
Excellent. So again, this same theme of openness is really coming through. And Dina, quick.
Two things I want to say here. I run a research lab. How do I run that lab? I run it with flexibility. I try to really listen, even when I'm feeling anxious and busy. I try to really listen to my people, because they come to me with things, and sometimes I have too much in my head, but I try to really listen to them. And we have, for example, we have a lab culture and expectations booklet that really lays out how the lab thinks. But I'll also say, more recently, I've had much higher levels of leadership at the university. And that's really important, because I can help shape who the next leaders are and who gets the next position of leadership. And what we want is new people who do things in a different way. We don't want the old school, hardcore, who work in a certain way. So being in leadership is a privilege, because it allows us the opportunity to shape the next lot of leadership that are coming through. And that's how you change culture. And I think that's really important.
Lovely point to end on. And what I can really see is we've not even touched the tip of the iceberg of the questions we could be talking about. So we're just going to have another session, guys. But what I'm going to ask you all to do is, we're going to see in a minute, I've posed the question on Slido, are you an integrator? Are you a separator? You keep your work and personal separate. Are you an integrator? You blur them together. Or are you a bit of a cycler? And without elaborating, I'm just going to ask each of you to say one word. Which are you? Maria, which are you?
I used to be integrator. Now I'm an elaborator. Now I'm a cycler.
Excellent. Dina?
Integrator.
Integrator. Gabrielle?
Probably a cycler.
Cycler. Marcella?
I'm an integrator.
Integrator. Jackie?
Definitely an integrator.
Excellent. So this is so interesting now, because we sort of heard quite a lot of integrators. I have to say I was probably a separator when I was younger, and now an integrator. So I'm going to go to you, Annika, and you're going to share the results of the poll and share some questions from everybody.
Exactly. That actually resonates also with what people have answered. Can you all see my shared screen? So yes, most of the people answered that they are cyclers as well. Right, followed after integrator, and then last but not least separator. So there seems to be a pattern here.
And what I'll just say, Annika, before you go on, if you're sort of wondering which is the right one, I think what the research would show is that it's what's right for you. So if you're a separator, you know, what you want is a world where you can keep things separate. So you're going to be more happy and satisfied in your career to the extent that you can do that. Ditto with an integrator. So it's not like one of these is right or wrong. It's more about trying to understand where you sit and then trying to create, you know, that world that works for you. So carry on, Annika. I just wanted to mention that because sometimes people are like, which is the right answer, you know?
Yeah, no, that's good that we clarified that. First of all, we had a lot of participation in the chat from everyone, so thanks for that. Just a little feedback for Marcella, for example. Someone said, I need 2 AAs, one for my work and one for home. And a comment regarding from Siranja to Dina, I just failed today and I feel bad, but I'm strong with a plan B. So thanks, Dina, for sharing that. And in regard to, so we've had like, this is actually a very broad topic, but I think what a lot of people are interested in touching on the saying no. So when do I know what is the right opportunity to miss out? When do I say no? When do I say yes? Do you have any insights on that? Dina, you're shaking your head already, so maybe you want to go first.
You know, I'm the wrong person to ask because I say yes to a lot of things. And the reason I say yes to a lot, I do say no to things. If there's something I really don't want to do and I'm not interested and I don't think I'll do a good job, I say no. But invariably, I say yes. I was going to say no to coming today. I just full disclosure, because I'm in the middle of writing a huge grant application that's due next week. And I thought, oh, God, I can't do that. So I was going to say no, but I didn't. I'm glad I didn't. I've never regretted saying yes to things. I've learned from everything that I've done. If it doesn't feel right for you, if you feel that you really can't do it, say no. Seek advice, find a mentor, seek advice. But if you think you'll get something out of it, even at a personal level, look, I'm a yes person, so I'm probably not the best person to ask.
Is there a no person in one of the laureates? Give me a sign. No, everyone's shaking their heads. Sharon, do you have advice regarding saying no?
And look, this I think is possibly a little bit of an issue for women too, is that we tend to say yes to a lot of things, but also I do think a theme that's come through my understanding of talking to laureates over many years is that they do, on average, tend to embrace opportunity, and that's part of what underpins success. But life is short and there are multiple demands, so we do have to learn, what are we going to say no to? I think there was a really nice comment right at the beginning about, you know, values and what's important. So that's one lens to put over this. A lens that I put over it increasingly, and, you know, different stages of career, we might do different things, is, but what can I uniquely contribute? I think if I'm asked to do something that 300 other people can do, I will say no. But if it's something I can uniquely contribute, I will say yes. So Jackie, jump in now.
Just something, I'm trying to get better at saying no. I am pretty poor at it, but something that I did find was that at one point I was the only female professor in the school, and whenever they needed to have balance on committees, I was asked to do everything. And I had to say, this is not fair. This is not equitable. This is meant, you're trying to do this to make it equitable because you want gender, but I'm like, I can't be on every interview panel and everything. So sometimes you've got to look at it and see, and a bit like Dina said, are you going to get anything out of it? And a lot of these I wasn't. It was service, but it was way above what the expectation would be. And that actually was what helped me to really start saying no to things. That it took that awakening of, I'm not doing it for the right reason. I'm just doing it for somebody else.
Yeah, that sort of connects to what I just said, because it's sort of like you're not necessarily being invited to contribute for your unique contribution, but, you know, to tick a box. And, you know, under that scenario, you might end up going, well, no, I don't want to tick the box. I'm only going to do it when I can really genuinely make a contribution to this selection committee. Dina.
I'll just add that Sometimes when that sort of thing happens, I've found it as an opportunity to make change. So, for example, if the guidelines for selecting those committees are really narrow, that's a really great opportunity to open up those guidelines, whether that's to people at different levels or to people outside of your immediate organisation, whatever that might be. So that's an opportunity as well. You might not take up the opportunity, but you could use it as an opportunity to make change that will then be more inclusive.
Thank you, Dina. And just one last tip, I do have a stop list now as well as a start list. So in theory, I'm not meant to put anything on the start list unless something goes off. I also put something on the stop list. So, you know, but again, this is where mentoring can be quite helpful, or even not mentoring, this is having a colleague, a buddy that you check in with and you say, how's your stop list going? You know, not your start list, but how's your stop list going? So, you know, that recalibration every now and again of these things I'm doing, do I really want to keep doing them? Annika, another question.
Yeah, then we had a lot of questions regarding juggling parenting and academic life. So people were wondering, how can I spend time with my young children without feeling guilty, or in general, the feeling of guilt of not having time for personal life in comparison to work life. Yeah, you're already agreeing with me. So maybe Jackie, you are nodding. What are you thinking about that? You said before you had 4 children, is that right?
Yeah, I've got 4 children. They're aged now between 13 and 19. But I made the effort, well, between my husband and I, we made the effort that we would pick them up. We would drop them at school every day and pick them up. So no after school care. We would try and be there for everything that we could. And it's a balance. Sometimes I end up working late at night or early in the morning, but I've always made the time to spend the time with them. And as I say, they may not, when they were younger, have been the cleanest or anything, but I felt that it was much better to have that fun time with them than worry about that strict schedule and trying to be the perfect mother. And as soon as I realised I had to stop trying to be perfect, and as long as they were happy, that was what mattered, it became a lot easier. And yes, it does mean sometimes working late, but I'd rather do that and have the time with them when they're around than, and that's just my personal thing, than try and work in that strict 9 to 5 and then miss the time with them.
Yeah, Maria, you're, oh,
Yeah,
sorry, Marcella.
Marcella, yeah, go,
Yeah, no,
sorry.
I definitely resonate with that, and I never regretted sort of spending the time with the kids, and it was great to have a husband who did 50-50, absolutely, so we could always pick them up, drop them off. We also didn't use before and after school care or even holiday care. We sort of took a week with them separately. And yeah, it's just been a great way to connect, and I think it also persists into the relationship once they get older. Mine are now 20 and going on 18. So, but I remember I was multitasking then too. I used to have my laptop somewhere by the side, and then when they'd start playing, and you know, I'd be playing with them, but then when they started interacting with themselves and they didn't need me for a moment, I'd go and do an email and then I'd jump back when they asked. And so yeah, just juggling
doing
it.
The integrator in
definitely
action.
integrating, but I don't regret any of the time I spent with them.
Thank you, guys. And I just want to put a counter view here in case there are women out there that are going, you know, I use care, etc. So I was the very, very different. I had a nanny from the time the kids were 6 weeks old. I had twins to begin with, and I personally couldn't wait to get back to work. I hated staying at home with kids. I love my older kids. So in some ways I've done it backwards. I outsourced all my care, a lot of care, when they were young. I don't find babies particularly interesting. And but now I try to be much more psychologically available for my older kids. Right. So I just want people out there to recognize there are different ways of doing this stuff. There's no right way. It's what's right for you. And that worked for me. You know, I would have guilt too. Everyone does. But I've got 3 gorgeous daughters that are, you know, fine. So, you know, despite the fact that one of the comments you guys shared before, you know, somebody said to me recently, oh, yours were the kids who used to just turn up in the crazy clothes at school because we let them dress themselves. So, you know, and so they were very strange children, but, you know, they survived. So Maria, I think you've got something to say.
I think I want to add to that, because I mean, I did most of my child rearing as almost single parent, and And so my kids definitely went to aftercare. I tried to drop them off because of flexibility at work, tried to drop them off at school care. But I also made sure that there was a support network around me and the children. So grandparents, at school, there were quite a few single parents and parents, so we help each other, right? So you look for your network of support, and those people become friends for life. And my kids still interact with those kids. So it's not like you're not damaging your children by having them in aftercare or by having other support networks around you. And I had no choice. I had to do that. And so I'd travel with them when I would travel sometimes. They'd come with me. They got to see the world, take them out of school for a few weeks at a time with a nanny, I would say. I would take a nanny with me for that. So there's different ways of doing it. It depends on, and my kids, I like you, I have a much better relationship now with the adult kids than maybe I had when they were younger kids. I love babies, but still, I would rather. I
don't really hate babies. They just weren't really my thing.
But I think I certainly always made time as I got older. I needed that time to talk things through, and even now, my 26 and 28-year-old, we still have a really good relationship, communication. So
this is the thing, because the questions, Annika, was about guilt. And I think whatever we do, we feel guilty, right? We all sit there and think, oh, I don't do that, I feel guilty. But I think what we're trying to say is, people do different things, and we're all just trying to struggle to deal with incredibly complex lives. And I don't know how we let go of that guilt, but just to recognise that we all share in it, I guess. Annika, I think we're almost out of time, but can we squeeze in one quick question?
A quick one, let me see. Maybe this is a more philosophical one, but someone asked, should we build realistic expectations and accept what is given in our lives rather than chasing unattainable dreams? And I think this has quite a negative connotation to it, but yeah, I was just thinking maybe you could give your opinion on it. Maybe Gabrielle, you haven't had the chance yet.
Yeah, unattainable dreams. I'm not sure I'm the right person, because I don't really think that impossible is in my dictionary. But I'm the sort of person who loves the challenge, and I wasn't always like that. I found it really stressful, when I was younger. But I think once you have so many rejections or failure to embrace things, you become very resilient around these things. And striving for that unattainable is well, what is the puzzle? So for me, a lot of things are puzzles that I have to solve as opposed to problems. And I like solving puzzles. You do have to be realistic, though. Some things are just pipe dreams. And that, again, is where you have to take a step back and go, is this going to be the thing I should chase after? And if it is, then it might be you have to sacrifice other things. The balance isn't about having everything. The balance is about having the things that are important to you and taking that time. And sometimes the decision about taking time, people are talking about children or elderly. I always say to people in my lab, when your baby has its first step or smile, that will only happen once. And if you miss it, you will kick yourself a lot. And so you should take time in the moment for all the people in your family, and similarly with people in your lab, but have some very specific lines that you draw so that you can stay healthy to be able to do those things. Otherwise, the whole thing falls to pieces.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? Maria is nodding as well. Would you like to add something to that?
I just agree with everything really that Gabrielle was saying in terms of, just achieving having your goals and your passions, but not necessarily, they're yours, right? You don't shy away from them, but not, and I think what I said before also is that what does success look like for you individually as a person? It might be that that you want to be a fantastic parent for your kids when they're young, and then you maybe come back to academia or you come back to a career a bit later on. There are lots of different ways that we can approach our careers. There's no one path.
I think that's right, Marie, and it comes back to that point about time. There are times when, and Dina mentioned it earlier with her daughter, where you just really focused on one, you're very practice separator, but then other times you can really invest in your work. And I think having that broader perspective on your career can help as well. Dina.
I'll make it quick because I know we're at the end, but I'll just say something that I think about a lot these days as I'm getting older. I come from my parents were migrants. They didn't even speak English. I didn't speak English until I went to school, and my parents worked in factories. I didn't have the sort of dreams that a lot of people had until later, much later in my career, because I just never thought it was possible for someone like me. And so I think just thinking back on that background and who I grew up with and how I grew up, well, what I'm living now is a dream, frankly, because I never thought I'd get there. You know, my parents never came to teacher interviews. They never helped me with my homework. So very different background. And so I think, you know, why am I saying that? Because I think we do need to think about the backgrounds that we come with and what leads us to have the dreams that we have and what we want to achieve with that. And I think you should have your dreams. You should achieve what you want to achieve if you can. But I think we're all here in this room, and for everyone to be here, you must all be very successful to be here as a starting point. So remember that, you know. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, Marcella?
Yeah, I just want to
Last
say,
word,
believe.
Marcella.
Oh,
Yep, last word. Just keep it
yeah,
short.
last word. I just want to say
wrap up.
believe in yourself, because I think very often you can achieve a lot more than what you think. And so don't put boundaries. You know, if you're passionate about something, just go for it, because that
Thank you so
passion will
much.
fuel the success, I
Yeah.
think.
Thanks, Marcella, and everybody. I think just one thing to mention, we always have conversation, and I can see it's been happening in the chat, where people are like, this shouldn't be about fixing women. This is about, we are also operating in these systems, and it was mentioned earlier, the misogyny, but also the administration in universities, these sorts of things. So we always recognise that as well. This is not about trying to fix women. This is about trying to all support each other in this difficult journey. So we just literally have 2 minutes left. So thank you all so much for joining. I can see we had over 200 people on the call. We've had 5 fabulous laureates who've really shared openly tips and experiences. And thank you so much for that. I know it means an enormous amount to the women that are listening. Thank you, Annika, for your wonderful sharing and questions. And thank you. There is a small team in the background, Isabel, Eleanor, and others who help with the sessions. We will have another session in April. While people are in the last minute, if there's a topic you would like us to cover, please pop it in the chat, because I cannot decide what to do next. And so if there's a particular topic, actually, I have to say there are a lot of questions we didn't get to, so maybe we'll pick one of those up to further discuss. But we are at the end. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. It's been truly fantastic to hear your perspectives. And thank you. I didn't say thank you to the audience, which in the end is the most important thing. Thank you guys for joining us and you know, sharing in this conversation. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye. Lovely to
Bye.
meet you.